Hello, and welcome to the Philosophy on the Internet podcast. I am your host, Anthony David Vernon, and what we do on this podcast is cover various social media sites and the philosophy happening on them. This episode, I want to focus on philosophy happening on Instagram and Facebook. And I want to start off with philosophy on Instagram. If you look at the philosophy scene on Instagram, a lot of it is centered around Stoicism, or at least the type of people who are interested in modern Stoicism and stuff that can be kind of put into the basket of modern Stoicism. So it doesn't have to be Stoic stuff necessarily, but the type of quote unquote wisdoms that Stoics would be interested in. And in that, right, we see that a lot of the philosophy happening on Instagram is very quote based. And that's not unsurprising because, well, Instagram is an image based app by and large. Of course, there's videos, of course, there's stories, of course, there are reels, but the vast majority of stuff on Instagram philosophy wise is an image, be it of a philosopher or some, Roman statue or something of that sort, with a quote placed on top of it from some famous thinker, be they a more present thinker, someone like Peter Singer or Zizek, or be they an old school thinker like Confucius or Seneca. Now, in all of this, though, a lot of these philosophy pages will mix in quotes from recognized philosophers, mixed in with figures not usually seen as philosophers. We can include someone here like Anthony Bourdain, or we can include a lot of quotes from stuff like Lord of the Rings. So ultimately, though, what we end up with is philosophy on Instagram being by and large reductionist towards quotes. And there's nothing wrong with looking at quotes or, being interested in quotes or using quotes, but just the way that Instagram is built as an app and given the type of content that it's built to feature, a lot of the content on Instagram is reduced to quoting, is reduced to showing off words said by this. One count that demonstrates this quite well is philosophy bits, right? There's even a Stoics feed that is literally just a quotes page, philosophy breaks, all of these sorts of pages which are like, here's this quote, here's this quote, here's this quote. The number of accounts that have a statue of Marcus Aurelius or an AI image of Marcus Aurelius as their profile picture is just seemingly countless. And on that note of AI, a lot of the images used as the background for these quotes are AI images, something very important that will come up later. But what we see with Instagram is just the use of whatever images make sort of sense for the philosophical vibe that one is going for. A lot of these Stoic pages will have, AI images of strong individuals. If it's trying to be more reflective and serious, then there may be an AI image of, let's say, Zizek or Charles Bukowski, something along these lines. This isn't to say that every account is using AI, right? A lot of them will use real photos, but the photo is just a means to show the quote, right? Images, drawings, none of these things matter as long as it's cleanly presented enough to show off the given quote. Now, the second most popular means by which philosophy is portrayed on Instagram would be through memes. There are plenty of memes based pages in philosophy on Instagram. It's the second most common way. Now, these tend to have a little less followers than the quotes pages for pretty obvious reasons. In order to understand a philosophical meme, you already have to have some awareness of philosophy in order to do that. With the quote pages, you can just look at the quote and go, oh, cool, that's a quote, I like that quote, and run with it. However, with the philosophy memes pages, such as Philosophical Genes, you really need some level of know-how in philosophy to get in. That doesn't mean there aren't some large philosophy meme pages, and there's even accounts that will mix the two together. An account like Philosophy Ideas will do this. They'll mix in kind of the quotes with the memes, but nonetheless, by and large, these two things are pretty separate from one another. If you have a quotes-based page and you put up a meme, it might throw off some of your audience. If you are a memes-based page and you put off a quote, you may be seen as being too shallow. And so in this, right, the space that philosophy on Instagram finds itself in is in a casual philosophy space. This isn't inherently bad. This is just the existence of that space. And so there's not as much of these worries about the particulars going on. It's not really a space for philosophical argumentation, right? Like, people aren't arguing about the specifics of a quote, for example. By and large, comments are like, that's a good quote. Yeah, I've used that quote in my life. And when it's a philosophical meme, most of the comments are, comments of like joking around or laughing, or maybe a comment here and there that's about the exaggeration of said meme. But interestingly enough, there isn't really a lot of pushback against the use of AI images and AI media making tools, quote unquote, on these Instagram pages. And one area where we can see the influence of AI in a social media outlet's philosophical space is Facebook. It is no mystery that Facebook is full of quote-unquote AI slop. The website is just absolutely riddled with AI content, AI comments, and this has not spared the philosophical space on Facebook. What you end up with is a lot of generated videos of the abs-based, stoic statue-looking people with an AI voice read, reading out some sort of quote about being strong and being tough. That philosophy on Facebook is very centered around manosphere stoic ideas, right? The apps of Meta very much are pushing and projecting those stoic philosophical ideas, at least in their modern contemporary form. And so in order to even get to any quote-unquote real philosophical content on Facebook, it is an absolute landmine at this point in time. And it's really drowned out by the AI stuff. And you can really see why there isn't that big of a philosophical scene on Facebook anymore. If you were to even go back 5 years ago, there is some thriving philosophy groups and philosophy channels, quote unquote, or outlets, I should say, or pages, friends, these sorts of terms for that. But really, a lot of the people that were taking this stuff seriously do not post to the same frequency, aren't active, right? The groups are often quite dead. And so you can see people who were active in Facebook philosophy groups moving away to other outlets, be it YouTube, be it Reddit, be it Discord, even it being Blue Sky as a really good example. And so in this, right, what we have is philosophy on Instagram being lively but shallow. It's like a puddle that does not end, because it's able to produce quip after quip after quip again and again and again, and it's not a lot of engagement, but it's a lively engagement. Whereas Facebook, in theory, is producing a lot of content that could have depth, given that it's more attuned to showing off videos and longer comments and longer posts. However, this isn't happening despite Facebook's potentiality because of the invasion and infestation of AI into the space. The way that AI has infiltrated philosophy on Instagram is more as a background sort of thing. It's a bug, it's not a feature. Whereas for Facebook, AI is a feature at this point and not a bug. And so, what we find ourselves in with philosophy on Facebook is this inhumanity going on with it. Yes, there's a person generating these sorts of things, but there isn't that human element. There's that detachment, which many people seek in philosophy. Many people seek philosophy for a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. But one does not acquire that if all of the contents are based in AI creation. Whereas Instagram is still having this sense of authenticity because it's largely projecting quotes that may touch someone's life or may be relatable to one's life, and even the memes may tug on someone's humor, may tug on somebody's heartstrings, or may tug on somebody's interest in a particular topic in a way they haven't known before. Yes, I'm giving memes the power to not only make somebody laugh, but also to make somebody feel things and learn things. And so in the Instagram philosophy space, one can learn. Learning is a thing that can very much occur in this space. However, on the Facebook side of things, it's very hard to learn, even if there is wisdom in the generated messages and the generated voices, because you really have that dissonance of, well, this is AI, this is fake, this is not real, this is not true, right? If philosophy, in some sense, is the pursuit of truth, as Socrates in some ways puts it, or the pursuit of knowledge, and the sophists, who he was a rival of, were in pursuit of rhetoric, victory at all costs, these rhetorical victories, no matter what you do, then this is what AI feels like. It feels like it's just being generated to get rhetorical attention, to get rhetorical victories, as opposed to actually connecting with individuals. And it's interesting to see how a niche space, that being philosophy, on these two websites owned by the same company have gone different directions, right? Due to the structure of these websites, maybe even due to the audience, the policies, etc. of the sort, one has retained some level of authenticity in the face of AI, even though it may be a shallow authenticity or a seemingly shallow authenticity, where the other has lost its view of being authentic, where groups are dying, membership, participation, right? Even as philosophy is a growing topic in modern society, Facebook is a space where philosophy is dying. Where Instagram, it's having, some steady growth and steady engagement in that sort of space. And it's interesting to see as to why that occurs. And really, that occurs due to just the introduction of a new technology onto these internet spaces. Yes, AI content has affected YouTube, for example, but it hasn't proliferated as much. People don't share AI philosophy videos on Discord. People don't share them on Reddit. So on these sharing spaces, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, right? People aren't sharing solely AI content. Even the AI generated background images on Instagram have a human element. Yes, it may be very quick, but one still has to go into, Photoshop or Pages and add text on top of the given AI image. Whereas for Facebook, it's literally entire videos done by AI, captioned by AI, voiced by AI, by and large, if not in their totality in many cases. And so in this, right, philosophy on the internet will be forever affected by AI. The AI catch-up may happen to other outlets, as it has already happened on Facebook. And certainly there's AI creep on Instagram and AI creep on YouTube. And it's only a matter of time where AI will try to creep more and more into these spaces. Not that the AI is conscious, but those using AI to create media, to create messages, to put out ideas and notions. And Facebook right now is the present par excellence of AI and philosophy having a merger in terms of philosophy content production. With that being said, I want to thank the Philosophy Today channel for hosting this episode of Philosophy on the Internet. Adios. One other thing I'd like to add is that there are some professional philosophy Instagram pages. One good example of this is the philosophy page from and by the University of Illinois Philosophy Department. One of the things that's good about social media is that it can be used to advertise one's philosophy department, give professors and TAs a platform to potentially talk about philosophy and their studies and their research and etc. of the sort. And I just thought it would be important to highlight that, even though it is not one of the main happenings on philosophy on Instagram.